Hello everyone. Today we turn back to our original topic, Sino-U.S. history and Empress of China. The first American cargo ship sailed to China. On February 22, 1784, about 5 o'clock in the early morning, at the East River Wharf of New York, with floating ice and chilly wind, U.S. cargo ship Empress of China, with 43 sailors and loads of goods, slowly embarked in the twilight to the remote and mysterious East China. This was the beginning of Sino-U.S. trade. It was a Sunday and also the 52nd birthday anniversary of George Washington. Empress of China was built in Baltimore in 1783, originally named Angelica for U.S. Navy. The American Independence War was over, so it was renamed for China Tour. It was 104.2 feet in length, 28.4 feet in beam, and 16 feet draft, with loads of 360 tonnage, and with pounder guns and light arms. In 1783, just after American independence, a banker in Philadelphia named Robert Morris was busy in making a plan for China trade. Morris was not only a merchant, but also one of the U.S. founding fathers, with his signatures on all Declaration of American Independence, the federal regulations, and American Constitution. He was then the richest man in America and provided needs and ammunition for American Continental Army. At the most difficult time in the war, he donated his own money, $1.4 million, to U.S. Army. And in comparison, in 1781, when Yorktown Battle began, the 13 colonies of America could only collect $800,000. Robert Morris was a man full of stories. Later, we can make our special program for him for more details. Robert Morris established the first U.S. bank, the Bank of North America, and he was appointed as superintendent of finance. The decade of 1790 to 1800, Philadelphia was temporarily as American capital. Morris had a big mansion nearby the Independence Hall, and after 1789, and when George Washington was elected as first U.S. president, and this house was borrowed to Washington as his president house, and Morris removed to a smaller house nearby. President Washington had never lived in a White House in Washington, and the second U.S. president, John Adams, and also lived here until 1800 when he moved to Washington. After the war, Morris and several other New York businessmen invested $120,000 US for purchasing this ship. The Empress of China, in November 1783, he wrote to his friend, U.S. State Secretary John Jay, and said, "I have a plan to send some cargo ships to China to encourage some other people for business adventure." He prepared for it and collected 30 tons of ginseng, and furs, cotton, black pepper, and silver coins, etc., and decided a good date to set off. In January 1784, New York Governor George Clinton and the U.S. Congress signed a document for this tour. And due to lack of knowledge about China, the uncertain about whom to deal with later, so all kinds of titles were listed on the document, such as Honorable Monarchy, King, Leader of the Republic, Prince, Duke or Baron, Noble, Town Leader, Congressman, George, General, Judicial Representative, and Regent, etc. The captain of Empress of China was John Green from Philadelphia, a Navy officer. The shipper cargo was Samuel Shaw and Thomas Randall. There were different ways for Chinese translation for the name of Samuel Shaw, such as Xiao Wei, Xiao Shanming, or Shan Mao Zhao. He was from Boston, and in the Independence War, he had been assistant for General Henry Knox. And General Knox worked as Washington's assistant and good friend. And he was also the artillery commander of U.S. Army and was appointed as the first U.S. Secretary of War. Simon Shaw was very brave in the war and was highly valued by Washington. He became the first consul to China and unfortunately passed away at a very early age of 36 on the way back from the third mission from China in 1793. In March 1784, 1 month after sail, an Empress of China arrived at Volta Islands of Africa, where they stayed a while for restoring fresh water and a brief overhaul. Later, it crossed over the Cape of Hope and Indian Ocean and then arrived on the Macau on August 25th, 1784. And 3 days later, it got to Huangpu Harbor at Guangzhou or Canton, finished the historical tour. The Captain Green was very excited and he wrote on his log that Empress of China honorably raised the American flag for the first time at this area of China Sea, and this day is August 28, 1784. The reason why China as the priority for American overseas trade: first, due to China's prosperity; the second, America's tough situation home and abroad. As a new nation, America had very limited population and resources, with 13 states and only 320,000 square kilometers, almost the half size of the current Ukraine. Britain undertook embargo to America and garrison in Canada. France, the wartime ally, set limits to U.S. business at the Caribbean. Spain occupied Mexico and the Mississippi Delta, blocking U.S. ships to the Gulf. So America had no other choice but to China. The cargo ship entered into Huangpu Harbor, Guangzhou, and met with China's state business companies, also called Han. And Chinese people were very friendly to these new people, who behaved very humbly and obeyed the rule. Chinese also had helped them avoid one possible crisis, because for the British were still hostile to the new independence of America and disliked the new competitor to share its business in China. It is said the British East Indian Company plotted to destroy the cargo ship Empress of China, and it was stopped by China's government for not allowing the wars among the foreign ships at China waters. Besides, it was the first sale of American cargo ship to China with limited goods and capital. So Chinese permitted Americans purchasing in China on credit, which showed sincerity and kindness from Chinese people. During the 4-month stay in China, America also involved inadvertently in a dispute between British merchants and the Chinese government, which happened on November 25th, 1784. About this issue, and there were 2 statements. One was that the British cargo ship Lady Hughes invited all the foreign sailors for a big party, and during their drink, one British gunner fired on the back for a salute to the Chinese business company, and resulted in killing 1 Chinese and injured another 2. The other statement said a Danish cargo ship sailed to leave the harbor at Canton, and this gunner fired to salute, and he accidentally killed 2 Chinese on a nearby boat and injured another one. To avoid being punished, the British merchant helped this guy escape from arrest. Accordingly, it was illegal for foreign cargo ships to fire at China's harbor, and the crime of murder should be repaid with life. Chinese government asked the British to turn over the culprit and was refused. and nothing achieved after 9 rounds of talk. Later, China took British supercargo-ships as a forfeit to enforce them to give in. Then all the foreign businessmen in Canton signed the request for Schmitz's release, and the American also joined in with British request. By the way, after 37 years later, a similar incident that happened between American merchants and the Chinese government, which was the Terra Nova incident or Emily cargo ship incident in 1821. The first Sino-U.S. legal dispute in history. Next session, we will give more details about it. You can join in if you are interested in it. As to British troublemaking, and Qing Emperor Qianlong was very angry and determined to punish the offender. For the Western merchants, and including the Americans, asked for extraterritoriality and prepared to fight against the Qing government, resulting in a standoff. The Chinese government reinforced with more troops, and the audacious British had to apologize and turn in the gunner. From the outbreak to the end, the Chinese never hassled the Americans, and in fact, they have been kind to these new people, even presented 2 bowls of soup to U.S. government before Empress of China ready to leave. Americans sold out their cargo ships and purchased the tremendous red tea, green tea, and porcelain, silk crafts, and Chinese spices left Canton on December 27, 1784, and returned to New York on May 11, 1785. Captain Green and just fired 13 gun salute, proclaiming the end of this great voyage for 15 months. On the same day, when Empress of China returned, all the goods from China sold out and made profits about $30,000 and with a profit rate of 25%. American newspaper called this China sale visionary and fruitful as a milestone in business history. Due to British embargo, Americans were hard to buy foreign goods like this. So very early in the morning, and some people had been waiting at the wharf, and even George Washington sent some people to buy porcelain and fans, totally 302 items. To promote trade with China, the U.S. Congress gave high regards to this China sale. August 17, 1785, Empress of China sailed for the second time, and George Washington told the captain to buy more Chinese porcelain and silk that his wife favored, and gave a long list of the purchased items. Since then, the Sino-U.S. trade business boosted, and until 1790, American had 14 cargo ships to China, and the trade amount increased to $3 million, the second after Britain. It is recorded during the 48 years from 1786 to 1833, there were totally 1,104 U.S. cargo ships visited China and created the early U.S. millionaires. And since then, about 28 U.S. cities and towns named as Canton would shoot great Chinese influences on America at the early age. Empress of China was recorded in Sino-U.S. history for its initial sale for China trade. In April 2006, the Chinese President Hu Jintao visited America and mentioned in speech that the voyage of Empress of China opened the curtain of friendship between Chinese people and American people. U.S. former President Obama also said when he visited Shanghai in November 2006 that Sino-U.S. new ties had been made because of Empress of China. It had been 238 years since the first sale to the following engagement that full of all kinds of stories and news, including the recent Taiwan visit and military drills due to U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senator Markey. Above all, the related goodness, hostilities, and love-hate stories in Sino-U.S. history we will tell in great details in our future programs. And thank you all, and see you next time.